Have you ever been ghosted by someone who once claimed to care deeply for you? Have you felt the sting of silence that speaks louder than words, leaving you anxious, confused, and emotionally drained? What if I told you that silence wasn't a pause, but a strategy? Today, we're uncovering one of the most powerful and insidious tools of emotional manipulation, the calculated silence of the narcissist. If you're ready to take back control of your emotional life and stop falling into their traps, you're in the right place. Make sure to subscribe to this channel, where we turn emotional chaos into clarity using timeless Stoic wisdom and modern self-mastery techniques. 1. The weapon of silence. Narcissists don't go silent because they're thinking things through. They go silent to make you suffer. Their silence is not a moment of reflection or regret. It's a calculated tool. This silence isn't about solving problems. It's about intensifying them. By withholding communication, they create a void, and they know you'll rush to fill it. You'll scramble for answers, try to decode the meaning behind the quiet, and begin to blame yourself for whatever triggered it. That's the trap. This isn't just quiet time. It's warfare, psychological warfare. Silence becomes a dagger disguised as peace. It's weaponized discomfort. In any healthy relationship, silence may bring healing, reflection, or calm, but for the narcissist, it's a strategic pause designed to destabilize you. It's a passive-aggressive punishment that keeps you on edge, always wondering when the next blow will come. They don't shout because silence hurts more. It echoes in your mind, pulling your self-esteem apart, thread by thread. When a narcissist stops speaking to you after an argument, it's not about healing, it's about hurting. It's their way of saying, I have the power here, you'll come crawling back. It's a psychological hostage situation. They silence themselves, not to calm the storm, but to create one inside you. They want the silence to drive you mad with anticipation, anxiety, and guilt. This isn't love. This is dominance masked as emotional withdrawal. They want you to question yourself, to obsess over what you did wrong, and to beg for the crumbs of their attention. That's not love. That's control. They want you in a state of emotional starvation so that even a simple hello feels like a feast. This behavioral cycle conditions you to associate their approval with relief and their silence with punishment. Over time, this erodes your sense of reality. You start to believe that you deserve their silence. But here's the truth: you don't. You're not broken. They're just playing a very cruel game. They are training you, whether consciously or not, to accept mistreatment as normal. The longer you tolerate this silent abuse, the more you internalize the lie that love must be earned through suffering. But the truth is, love doesn't punish you with absence. Real love doesn't manipulate through silence. Once you see the pattern, you must refuse to chase, because your self-worth should never hinge on someone else's refusal to speak. 2. Emotional dependency and power plays. Here's the dark truth. Narcissists don't need your love. They need your need. Love to them is not a connection, it's a transaction. And the currency? Your emotional dependence. They thrive not when you're happy, but when you're uncertain. When you're questioning your value, replaying arguments, and desperately hoping for their approval. That's when they feel powerful. They don't want your love, they want your emotional hunger, because it means they can control when and how you're fed. When they disappear, it's not a mistake, it's a method. It's not that they lost interest or forgot about you. No, their absence is deliberate. They retreat to create longing. They vanish to make you panic. It's the bait they set so you'll chase them, because the more you chase, the more you surrender control. The narcissist counts on you reaching out first, apologizing even when you're not at fault. That's the goal. Get you to do the emotional labor in the relationship. By withdrawing after causing pain, they keep you hooked, addicted to the hope of validation. This forces you into a role where you're always the one chasing, and they're always the one deciding when you get relief. It's a cycle of hurt, silence, and then just enough attention to keep you invested. And like any addiction, the high becomes rarer while the withdrawal grows stronger. They may love bomb you afterward, giving you affection in short bursts, just enough to keep you tethered to the hope of a return to the good times. And that's exactly where they want you, off balance, self-doubting, and emotionally dependent. This imbalance makes you easier to manipulate. They create the wound, withhold the bandage, and then offer the cure only when it suits them. It's a loop designed to exhaust you until you mistake their attention for kindness and their control for connection. Over time, you lose your grip on what's healthy and begin to think that unpredictability is just part of love. But it's not. It's exploitation dressed in the costume of romance. You start prioritizing their moods over your own needs. You ignore red flags because you're scared of losing them. But the real loss is happening inside you, your boundaries, your peace, your identity. Emotional dependency is not loyalty. It's survival under a system of psychological control. And until you reclaim your self-worth and break the cycle, they'll continue to tighten their grip every time you reach for comfort. 3. Stoicism and emotional detachment. Now here's where Stoicism comes in. The antidote to manipulation is awareness, and the medicine is detachment. You don't win by fighting the narcissist at their level. You win by refusing to play their game. Stoicism teaches you to anchor yourself internally, to develop a kind of emotional independence that cannot be shaken by someone else's actions or inaction. The moment you recognize that their silence is not your failure, but their tactic, you begin to take back control. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This is the core of Stoic resilience. When a narcissist withdraws, your instinct may be to chase, to correct, to soothe, but that reaction hands them power. Instead, pause, recenter. Use their silence as a mirror, not a wound. It reveals their strategy, not your inadequacy. And when you remain composed, you disrupt their plan. When you understand that their silence is a tactic, not a reflection of your worth, you stop taking the bait. You no longer feel compelled to explain yourself endlessly or beg for clarity that will never come. You recognize that real communication doesn't come with punishment. And by not reacting, you starve the manipulation. They may escalate at first, but over time, your stillness will unnerve them more than any words ever could. Emotional intelligence means refusing to tie your value to someone else's behavior. You learn to stand still while they play their game, and in doing so, you win. You don't win by arguing. You win by not being moved. You win by mastering your responses and protecting your peace. You begin to measure your strength not by how much pain you can endure, but by how calmly you can walk away from it. That is the Stoic way. Detachment doesn't mean indifference. It means sovereignty. You don't stop caring. You stop clinging. You still feel emotions, but you are no longer ruled by them. The narcissist may try to provoke, to draw you back into their storm, but you've found your center. And once you've built that core of calm, they can no longer reach you. That is freedom. That is power. That is Stoicism in action. 4. Breaking the manipulative cycle. This is the cycle: pain, silence, self-blame, pursuit. Emotional manipulation often follows a predictable rhythm. It begins with a wound, sharp, personal, and calculated. The manipulator, often someone skilled in the art of psychological control, knows exactly where to strike. They cut with a cruel word, a dismissive gesture, or an intentional act of neglect. Then comes the silence, not just the absence of sound, but a weaponized form of withdrawal. They disappear, emotionally or physically, leaving you with unanswered questions and aching confusion. What follows is self-blame. You internalize their silence. You replay every moment, wondering if you were too sensitive, too demanding, or too much. Finally, the pursuit begins. Driven by the desire for clarity, apology, or closure, you chase after them, not just for answers, but for relief. And in doing so, the cycle feeds itself again. The narcissist wounds you, vanishes, and then lets you chase the ghost of closure. This behavior isn't accidental, it's strategic. The narcissist or manipulator knows that uncertainty breeds dependency. They create emotional instability, then retreat, knowing your instinct will be to seek resolution. They want you to question your reality, to doubt your right to feel hurt. They thrive off the attention you give them in your search for peace. The ghost of closure is exactly that, a phantom. Something they dangle in front of you just out of reach to keep you coming back. They won't give you real answers, because clarity dissolves their power. So they offer breadcrumbs, a vague apology, a sudden return, a brief moment of affection, enough to pull you back into the loop. But you don't have to play that game anymore. The moment you recognize the game, you regain control. Awareness is a powerful disruptor. Once you name the cycle, you begin to see the manipulative patterns for what they are, rehearsed, calculated traps. And in seeing, you reclaim your agency. You are no longer blindly reacting. You are observing. You are no longer desperate for their validation. You are anchoring in your truth. The game only works if you believe you need their closure to heal, but you don't. Healing doesn't require their apology. It requires your decision to stop giving them the power to define your worth. Once you see the pattern, you can interrupt it. You stop explaining yourself, you stop overthinking, you stop needing their permission to heal. Pattern recognition is the first step toward liberation. You begin to notice how your need to explain yourself is met with indifference, how your attempts to make peace are twisted into blame. And that's when you choose differently. You stop sending the long messages, you stop defending your reactions. You stop sitting in bed wondering what you did wrong. You start reclaiming your energy. You set boundaries, not out of spite, but out of necessity. You recognize that healing isn't something you wait for. It's something you commit to, regardless of what they do. And that is when the cycle starts to crumble, because their power only works when you give it to them. The illusion of control begins to dissolve when you take back what was always yours: your voice, your peace, your sense of self. You no longer seek closure from the person who broke you. Instead, you close the chapter yourself. You write your own ending. And in that ending, you choose self-respect over reconciliation. Silence becomes strength, not punishment. Distance becomes freedom, not abandonment. The manipulator loses their grip because their tricks no longer work. The cycle breaks the moment. You decide it's not yours to carry anymore. That's where healing begins, not in their return, but in your refusal to chase. 5. Boundaries and self-worth. The real revolution begins with boundaries. Boundaries are not walls that keep people out. They are bridges to self-respect. They are quiet revolutions that begin within long before they are ever expressed outwardly. When you've been manipulated, disrespected, or devalued, your sense of self-worth can feel eroded. You start to believe that love means tolerating pain, that loyalty means silence, and that strength means endurance. But true strength is found in the ability to say, no more. Boundaries mark the beginning of this personal rebellion. They are the declaration that you will no longer abandon yourself to make others comfortable. This is where healing begins, not in retaliation, but in regulation. In finally choosing to protect your energy like it's sacred, because it is. Not the kind you scream or post online, but the silent, unshakable kind. The kind that says, I don't owe you an explanation, and I don't need your approval to validate my feelings. Real boundaries don't need to be loud. They aren't always visible to others, but they are felt deeply within. The most powerful boundaries are the ones that are lived, not announced. It's choosing not to answer a message that drains you. It's walking away from a conversation that's going nowhere. It's refusing to justify your healing, your choices, or your values. You don't owe anyone a step-by-step guide to your emotional recovery. You are not obligated to soften your truth so others can remain comfortable in their dysfunction. Your feelings are valid, with or without their approval. The moment you stop looking outward for permission, you begin building your inner fortress, quiet, firm, and unshakable. You reclaim your power when you realize your self-worth isn't up for negotiation. Self-worth is not a debate. It is not earned through performance or sacrificed in the name of connection. Yet manipulators often condition you to believe that your value depends on how well you cater to their moods, how much you tolerate their neglect, or how quickly you forgive their harm. This is the lie that keeps people stuck. But once you decide that your worth is inherent, not something to be bargained for, the game changes. You no longer engage in emotional auctions. You stop trying to prove your value to people who refuse to see it. And that's where the reclamation begins. You reclaim your time, your energy, and your identity. You understand that anyone who requires you to shrink in order to be loved is not offering love, they're offering control. Don't explain, don't defend, don't chase. Build a life so rich in self-respect that their silence feels like peace instead of punishment. There is deep freedom in not reacting, in choosing not to explain every boundary you set, in letting people be wrong about you and not rushing to correct them, in refusing to chase anyone who finds comfort in withholding affection. When you stop defending yourself, you conserve your energy for things that matter, your passions, your peace, your personal growth. You begin to fill your life with things that nourish you instead of drain you. And in doing so, their silence no longer triggers fear. It creates space. Space for clarity, space for self-connection, space for peace. Because you've built something stronger than their approval, a sense of self so whole that even their absence becomes a blessing. That's what it means to live with self-worth. That's what it means to be free. Self-mastery and inner peace. Closure doesn't come from them, it comes from you. When you stop waiting for them to fix what they broke, you begin the real work, healing from the inside out. Silence may have once been their weapon, but now it can be your sanctuary. Master your mind, guard your emotions, reclaim your peace. If this message hit home, subscribe now. You deserve clarity, strength, and a life beyond emotional control. Remember, you are not broken. You are becoming unbreakable.